you all for coming. And as they would say around the bay, it's a fine crowd. Before I start, though, I want to, in the House of Assembly, we have something that we often call when someone wants to speak without having a prerequisite, is that we ask for leave. So I'm going to ask for leave from all of you for 30 seconds, just to say to all of Newfoundland and Labrador and to everyone how proud we are of Alex Newhook and the Montreal Canadiens and their wonderful victory last night. So I just wanted to get that out there. Alex scored a wonderful goal, 2 and up 7. So thank you all so very, very much. Today our government is releasing the report of the Churchill River Independent Review Committee. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the committee for their services to the province. I'd also like to thank everyone who participated in the independent review process. Between December 15th and April 30th, the committee gathered written information and evidence from Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro and current and former public employees. It also interviewed a wide range of stakeholders and received more than 350 submissions from individuals, elected officials, Indigenous groups, and industrial representatives. It bears repeating that throughout the review period, the committee operated with true independence. Neither I nor any member of my government directed or influenced the committee during the review process. Instead, our government empowered the committee under the Public Inquiries Act to ask difficult but necessary questions about the MOU we inherited from the previous government so that our government and all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians could get the necessary answers we all deserve. I would note there are only 5 very small redactions, all of which only involve a prior government's cabinet confidence or sensitive commercial information from a third party outside of Newfoundland and Labrador. Otherwise, the entire report is unredacted. You have what I have. How we develop the Churchill River will be a generational decision. The consequences of this agreement will extend far beyond a single government, a political cycle, or a generation of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. We all live under the shadows of the original 1969 Churchill Falls Agreement, which in return for having Hydro-Quebec build a mega project on the Churchill River, forced Newfoundland and Labrador to give away our electricity at significantly below market rates for generations with no recourse whatsoever for reopening or renegotiating that deal. If the experience of 1969 taught us anything, it is that we must always look past the big promises and best intentions and always, always read the fine print. If the price tag for tearing up one bad deal is being forced to sign a second bad deal, then we will be consigning our children and grandchildren to continue living under the shadow of the 1969 agreement. I want the people of Newfoundland and Labrador to know that I will never sign such a deal. Instead, we need to negotiate the best possible deal, one which represents the interests and needs of our counterparties, whether they are in Quebec, Ottawa, or anywhere else, but always ensures we are the primary beneficiary of our own resources over both the short and long term. And on this, the report is clear. In the conclusion of their report, the Independent Review Committee says, and I quote, "The Memorandum of Understanding has several important aspects that are beneficial for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Despite these benefits, however, the IRC finds, based on the evidence it has reviewed, that the MOU as currently configured is not in the overall best long-term interest of the people of the province." End quote. In other words, the report confirms that while the MOU we inherited from the previous government had its merits, it was also deeply flawed. Simply put, there needs to be material improvements to this deal before we would ever consider signing it. The good news is that the report gives us a comprehensive roadmap for what needs to change in order to make an improved agreement for Newfoundland and Labrador possible. The report makes it clear that on issues ranging from pricing to transmission rights to the restricted ability of Newfoundland and Labrador to access our own electricity for economic development, to the saddling of our province with long-term debt, there are credible and realistic alternatives to the terms of the inherited MOU. At the same time, I want to make it perfectly clear what we are not doing. We're not tearing anything up, and we're not starting over from scratch. That is not what the report recommends. This was never about tearing anything up. This was always about getting the best deal for our province. That is why we created this independent review, so we can get this right. We're going to build on the parts that work and fix the parts that don't. In fact, I want to acknowledge that there was a lot of hard work done by people who legitimately believed they were acting in the province's best interests during the negotiation of the original MOU, including, I might add, the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Hogan. I also want to make clear that this report in no way shakes our resolve to develop Churchill Falls and Gull Island. We will develop this resource. This is one of the most abundant, untapped, clean energy projects you will find anywhere on the continent. The demand is there. I believe the will is there. And the framework for a better deal now sits in front of us. The report lays out several potential paths forward that would allow us to remain primary beneficiary of our own resources while also addressing the key needs of Quebec and all of Canada. I want to invite our partners in Quebec and the federal government to come to the table with us with renewed and shared good faith as we address the issues raised by the Independent Review Committee. For our part, we are prepared to commence those negotiations. We still welcome Hydro-Quebec as our partner. I recognize that negotiations are a two-way street. And as Premier Frechette in Quebec has told me, they have issues of their own they want to discuss. And that is fair. That's what a negotiation is all about. But notwithstanding the challenges in front of us, if our partners in Quebec and Ottawa are prepared to act in addressing these issues, so are we. That deal will be informed by the recommendations of the Independent Review Committee, which you can find on page 42 of the report. I encourage everyone in Newfoundland and Labrador to read those recommendations and draw your own conclusions about them. But as a start, here are mine. Recommendation 1 addresses the core question that underpins our province's approach. Is our goal to maximize the enormous value of the Churchill River to develop our own economy, or is it our goal to maximize the value we can get from selling this electricity outside of our province in order to drive government revenue that allows us to improve government services and reduce our provincial debt? The economic case is real. Nobody should underestimate the hundreds of billions of dollars worth of critical minerals that exist in deposits of the Labrador Trough. Having spoken to the Prime Minister about this, I know he certainly doesn't. Developing these resources is a project of national importance and could be a source of immense long-term prosperity for our province. But it will also take immense amounts of electricity. The financial case is equally strong. As Minister Pardy laid out in his budget, our province faces serious long-term fiscal challenges that the revenue from increased power exports could go far to addressing. Capturing fair value for the electricity that leaves our province is crucial. People can disagree on what the right balance is between these two goals, but I think most of us would agree that the answer needs to be, at some level, a meaningful combination of both. In fact, one of the most substantive criticisms of the previous government's decisions is that they made a different calculation. The report clearly lays out how they chose to chase the short-term financial benefits of cancelling the 1969 deal over any meaningful consideration of the long-term value of this resource to our province. In contrast, capturing fair economic and financial value will be the core to our negotiating strategy. Recommendation 2 speaks to guaranteeing the transmission infrastructure necessary to realize the maximum value of the Churchill River. This in itself is a multi-billion-dollar commitment above and beyond what is in the existing MOU. Recommendation 3 highlights the importance of Indigenous consultation. We have learned from our own experiences with the development of Muskrat Falls. We acknowledge and respect the agreements that were concluded with the Innu Nation on the Lower and Upper Churchill. We are cognizant of the requirement of the Labrador Innu Land Claims Agreement with the Nunatsiavut government. And I want to say, please be assured, we act in honor and will discharge our consultation duties we owe. Recommendation 4 asks a serious question about whether the previous government did their homework about the ownership and operating model at Gull Island, as opposed to accepting Hydro-Quebec's preferred model out of the gate. To be clear, the committee could find zero evidence that anybody involved in the previous government's negotiations ever seriously considered any model other than the one offered by Hydro-Quebec's preferred joint venture. This may well be the optimal model for developing a project of this scale. The fact is, we don't know. But unlike our predecessors, we're going to do our homework. And recommendation 5 speaks to improving the province's negotiating strategy and governance process, which was poorly defined, easily manipulated, and too often seemed to chase incentives other than maximizing long-term value for Newfoundland and Labrador. So we're fixing that. Today, I want to begin by announcing the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador's negotiating team. I have thought long and hard about this question. My goal was to choose a team that maximizes our ability to deliver a better deal for Newfoundland and Labrador, full stop. If someone wants to criticize me on political grounds from any direction on any of these choices, be my guest. I'm not thinking about politics. I am thinking about maximizing our chances of getting the best deal. I am pleased to announce that Barry Perry, former president and CEO of Fortis, will serve as the lead negotiator. Mr. Perry is one of the few people with immense experience in the utility space and comfortable in multi-billion-dollar negotiations. And as a proud Newfoundlander and Labradorian himself, Barry understands the historical importance of getting this right. Barry will be joined by Jerome Kennedy, a St. John's lawyer and former cabinet minister in the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. I know there will be some among the opposition who will not like Mr. Kennedy's appointment, and let me make it perfectly clear, I do not care about partisan attacks. I want the best team for the job, and Jerome is knowledgeable about this sector and its impact on this province. Also joining the team will be Jennifer Williams, who will be remaining as President and CEO of Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. I know that Ms. Williams has herself been the subject of public criticism, but I have had long conversations with Jennifer, who has been quite open about her role in the negotiation of the previous MOU. She and her team worked tirelessly to advance the negotiating mandate that was defined by the previous government of the day. Now she and her team are prepared to work just as hard on a new mandate from our new government. She has my confidence to do so. One important change we will be making is how we exercise oversight over the negotiating team. a key finding from both the Muskrat Falls inquiry and the Independent Review Committee report. The report of the IRC makes it clear that the Board of Directors of Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro did not exercise sufficient oversight over the negotiation of the MOU and recommend that this oversight be moved away from the Hydro Board. I accept that recommendation. We are moving oversight authority away from the Board of Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro and instead to an independent oversight committee, the details of which will be announced in the coming days. The negotiating team will report their progress to the oversight committee, who themselves will not be party to the negotiations. The oversight committee will serve as a key source of internal scrutiny and challenge to ensure that negotiations remain aligned with the mandate established by our government. The Oversight Committee will in turn keep Minister Parrott and I informed of the progress of negotiations. It is a system that ensures ultimate public accountability while minimizing the risk of political meddling. It is ultimately my responsibility as Premier to define the negotiating position of our province. And while I have no intention to negotiate in public and recognize that hard conversations behind closed doors will need to happen in order to get a deal done, the people of Newfoundland and Labrador deserve to know the core mandate I am giving our negotiating team. It will be built around three key principles. First, we require more power in order to develop our own economy, and in particular, the industrial and mining opportunities tied to the hundreds of billions of dollars worth of critical minerals in the Labrador Trough. Second, we require more value from the power purchase agreements at the heart of the deal, including a pricing structure for Gull Island that does not leave us stranded with billions of dollars in debt at the end of the power purchase agreement. And third, we require more transmission through Quebec so that we can retain the option to sell our allocated supply of electricity at market rates. We have officially reached out to the government of Quebec to clearly outline our position. We have a window of opportunity to fix what was broken and build something better. This is a cause that should bring together people of all political persuasions. It is an opportunity that I hope mobilizes the federal government and a Prime Minister who I know wants to build big things. It is a cause that can and must include Indigenous peoples. It is a cause that is of vital importance to this province and for all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, now and long into the future. A better deal is possible. The path in front of us will not be easy, but it is clear. My message to the Premier of Quebec, my message to the Prime Minister, my message to everyone in Newfoundland and Labrador is this. We are here, we are sitting at the table, we are ready to negotiate. Let's build something big together. Let's get this done for all of us.
Time for one question, one follow-up. And first we have Heidi Petrovic from Global.
You had said during the election campaign that you would take this to a referendum. Are you interested in that idea now?
First thing I need to do is get a deal.
Will there be a referendum or not?
I have to get a deal.
Cameron Kilfoy, President.
My first question is, where were the panel members today? Why weren't they present?
So when I initially asked the panel members to present their report, they all agreed. They all agreed they would be here to present their report. Subsequently, they decided that they weren't going to be here and they would let the report speak for themselves. That's their independent panel, that's their opinion to make. But was I excited to have them here? That's how I set it up. I thought that they would going to be here. They told me they would be here and then they changed their mind.
The new negotiating team that's set up, obviously they have the decisions, recommendations to consider, but I know at one point Quebec did say if land brought more demands to the table, they would too. I guess, how confident are you that a deal can be achieved between the two provinces?
Well, the discussions, I spoke to the Premier of Quebec yesterday, I think it was, and talked to her about the opportunities for both of our provinces. I've spoken with the Prime Minister, I've spoken with the Minister of Energy, and I believe there are real opportunities for all three of us, the Quebec, Newfoundland and Labrador, and indeed the federal government, who have a significant interest in wanting to build Canada, and I think all three of us can work together to get it done.
James Reed, Alms Land.
So it sounds like you're going back to negotiations with Hydro-Quebec. Are you also soliciting offers from other parties now?
We haven't released our negotiating strategy yet, but we are certainly going to be reaching out to the province of Quebec. And I've also, as I said, I have spoken with the Premier of Quebec, and I've also asked our chief negotiator, our lead negotiator, Mr. Perry, to reach out to the CEO of Hydro-Quebec.
One of the points you mentioned was the oversight from Hydro's board. One of the points that the committee raised is oversight from the government, kind of overstepping perhaps their role in negotiations. What will be the government's role in these negotiations moving forward?
Well, I think what you saw in the report was clearly that you know, it's concerning when a government steps in and implements changes to an MOU and does not take the advice of their negotiating team, does not take the advice of their financial advisors, and implements a clause that actually could cost the province up to $30 billion in debt. That is unacceptable. I think the putting in the recommendations of the Muskrat Falls inquiry and following up with the recommendations of the Independent Appointments Committee and establishing an oversight committee stops that from happening.
And Cleary and GD.
Premier, many premiers have tried and failed before to wield power through Quebec, and that wasn't negotiated in this MOU. Do you think it could ever be a reality? Could the federal government step in and make it so power can go through provinces the same way oil can?
I believe that that's exactly where the federal government are talking about. They're talking about a national energy corridor, and when you talk about a national energy corridor, then that means that energy is able to flow between all provinces. The Premier of Quebec is aware of the three items that I outlined today as well, and so I'm looking forward to the discussions that we have and negotiations that will happen, but I do believe that the federal government can play a role.
Richard Brandon, the OCN.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, yeah. We've waited to hear from your personal opinion on this MOU. You've said wait for the review. So now, what do you think about this deal?
So again, I'll go back to that because you're right. For more than a year now, people have asked me what I've stood for. Have I stood for the MOU? Have I stood against the MOU? And I'll be here today and say that I stand for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. That's exactly why we commissioned this independent review. Ever since this was first announced, we have talked about the need to send it for an independent review, to have another look at it. And that's exactly what's done. And this panel has done a great job in presenting their report to us, which clearly outlines opportunities for us. We will use this as the framework to negotiate a new deal.
Richard Brandon, the OCN.
You said during your remarks that you have a window of opportunity now to fix some of the issues that were found in this report. What is that window of opportunity? What timeframes are you working with here?
Well, it's, you know, that will depend upon how quick the federal government and Quebec want to sit down and talk about, especially the province of Quebec, to get back to the negotiation table. But let's make it clear that we are outlining our negotiating position and what we need to see as a opportunity here. We need more power, we need more value, we need more transmission.
And you mentioned a couple of times now that you've spoken with the Premier of Quebec. What's your understanding of their willingness to come back to the table right now?
I think that she has expressed a willingness to do that, and as a matter of fact, I hope to engage again with the Premier in the coming days.
Mark King, CBC.
You said definitively before that you would hold a referendum, and I understand you have to get a deal first before you can hold a referendum. But you seem to be opening the door to maybe not holding a referendum.
No, what I've said is what I've said is we need a deal, and you know, when I look at the opportunities that are in front of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador right now, when I think of where the federal government is in the last 5 months, when you think about how much has changed since this deal was since this MOU was first signed, I mean, the world has changed, but our whole country has changed. Our Prime Minister has now put a plan on that he wants to invest in Canada, and he has announced billions of dollars in planned investment. And I believe that if there's going to be a national energy strategy, that Newfoundland and Labrador needs to be part of that, and Quebec needs to be part of that. And I think there is, the Prime Minister went out of their way the other day to specifically mention Churchill Falls and this agreement in his speech. Think about that. The Prime Minister of the country has acknowledged that this is one of the best projects that they could bring forward on a national energy point. The point that we can open up the Labrador Trough and the billions of dollars in opportunity there. So, you know, these are the things that we're going to talk about. These are the things we're focused on.
I still don't know if we're holding a referendum. Right.
Well, again, as I said, the first thing I've got to do is get a deal.
Michelle Boudreau, Radio Canada.
Mr. Wickham, thank you. When you talk about a time frame, is it this year, this summer, in 2 years? What's
Well,
your-
certainly we're prepared to go to the negotiation table as quickly as possible. And if we can get a deal done in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it takes, I'm not limiting myself to a time frame.
How difficult will it be to negotiate this again?
Well, I think that when we sit down and our negotiating team sit down, that will be determined. They will start and look, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Sarah Snow, Canadian Press.
I just want to clarify, did the Premier of Quebec, did she give you a definitive yes, she is willing to sit down and renegotiate, the province is on board?
I believe that the Premier of Quebec is interested in sitting down and renegotiating a deal with the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, yes.
We heard today that we won't find out who the committee spoke to in doing its research to prepare this report. You made many promises about this process being open and transparent. How do those two things line up?
The review committee were an independent group. They did not report to me, and I do not know who they spoke to, just as you do not know who they spoke to. And that's been the whole piece about this. It's been a completely independent process. We've deliberately gave them their reference points, set it up in the regulations, and they've gone about and done their job.
What should the public know?
Well, I think you would have to ask the panel as to why they didn't include that in the report.
Terry Roberts, UBC.
Premier, you have a three-member panel, and one of those members, of course, as you mentioned, is Jennifer Williams, President and CEO of Hydro. I remember interviewing her, and she's telling us the MOU is the best possible deal, and that the MOU would make us the envy of Canada. So I'm just wondering how you decided that you would include her on the three-person negotiating team.
Ms. Williams brings an expertise and a knowledge that I think is important in the continuity of a negotiating team and bringing that forward. And let us not forget that the negotiating team and the MOU itself was significantly influenced by the former Premier and his ministers. When you think about the fact that they inserted this 2% escalation clause in the middle of the MOU, against the advice of the negotiating team, against the advice of their financial advisors, and it clearly highlights in the report that this could have potentially caused up to a $30 billion debt at the end of the power purchase agreement. So they were given a mandate by the previous government. We are going to be providing a new mandate to the committee.
Guardian. Jody with NTV News. How do you intend to strike the delicate balance of transparency and not negotiating in public here?
Well, that's always a challenge, but I think putting the oversight committee in place accomplishes that. Some of that is clearly one of the recommendations from the Muskrat Falls Inquiry, and that's something that that's why we put this in place.
Perhaps a question for the minister. We understand that recommendation 2 is independent of the MOU outcome. So do you have timelines on sanctioning and supporting construction of new transmission lines and development in Labrador West?
Yeah, so phase 1 of that study has already been carried out. We're ready to launch phase 2. There's an application in with the federal government right now. So as soon as we get that, we'll go through a feed process, and once we get those numbers back, we'll understand exactly where we are. But our plan is, as the Premier has said time and time again, to electrify Labrador, and a part of that means a transmission line that goes to Labrador West to support the mining companies over there in the Labrador Trough.
Actually, Minister, I'd like to elaborate a little bit on the mining stuff. One of the interesting
percentages that I read in the report, or one that stuck out for me, was the amount of iron ore mining in the Labrador Trough on the Quebec side versus our side. And the panel has suggested, you know, government needs to mandate a new line. What's being done right now for mining in Labrador and to bring more power to Lab West?
Yeah, so as I just said, $450 billion is the number that we think is untapped up there right now. Phase 1 of the study for transmission is done. The proponents that are involved in Rio Tinto, Takora, and CAMI, and the provincial government, because we have Julian Lake Reserve up there, have been funding this study, and they have agreed to pay for the power line in lieu of anything else in order to get it there. We have also looked for alternative routes of power here in the province in order to supply energy if we don't have the ability to do it through Gull Island or Churchill Falls expansion. So this isn't something that we've came in and not looked at, but the best option for the province and for Labrador, and certainly Newfoundland and all of Labrador, is Gull Island, CF1 and CF2.
One of the lines in the panel report was that there might be some challenges between these miners and getting this transmission line built, or maybe some delays, I guess, as different companies, their focus changed over time. Any concerns there?
Yeah. Not that we see. We've discussed this with those companies on a regular basis. We have meetings, as a matter of fact, meetings today with Rio Tinto. As it stands right now, the plan is to push forward. As I said, there's an application in with the federal government right now that we're awaiting a response on, and we're expecting that response any day. I believe the amount is $2.3 million in order to carry the study out, and once that's done, then we'll know the path forward.
Zach Howard, VOCM. Julia Enrill, CBC.
How exactly have Indigenous nations and the Innu Nation been involved or consulted with during negotiations?
Well, I don't know exactly who, as it was said, that the independent review committee met with, but I have met with the Innu Nation, the chief, and others. I met with them again. I spoke with them again this morning to reassure them of their involvement. They are a partner in this, and we will continue to ensure that they are brought up to speed as we move along.
Bailey Howard, NTV.
Premier, you said this isn't about tearing things up. Former Premier Andrew Furey did tear up the 1969 contract. How do you negotiate a good deal when this contract still hangs over the province?
I think that's the whole key here, is that, you know, we have to make sure that we don't repeat 1969. And I think when I talk about the need for more power, for more transmission, for more value, those are the keys to making sure that at the end of the day, that we do not have the same 1969 repeat. It was referenced in the report, and so we have to make sure that the value, when you think about the opportunities that Newfoundland and Labrador has, let us not forget that this is our power. This is our river. And we are here to make sure that we get the best value for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Can I ask how much the review cost?
So far, the bills that have come in, I think, are around $900,000.
The reviewers said that the GNL intervened and gave a mandate. You suggested that Jennifer Williams wasn't ultimately calling the shots. Who do you think was calling the shots? Was it your predecessor? Was it Andrew Furey? Who was responsible for it?
Well, I think what you've heard and from the report is that the government of Newfoundland and Labrador was overly influencing the negotiations. And when you think who the government of Newfoundland and Labrador is, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador would have been the Premier and his cabinet.
What specifically now do you want the federal government to do?
I think the federal government has talked a lot about building across the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. When we talk about transmission capacity and all of those things, I think there are lots of opportunities for the federal government here to be involved to make sure. Because as we've seen the federal government investing right across the country, they are deeply interested in the critical mineral opportunity, for example, that the Labrador Trough has. We've heard the Prime Minister talk about that. We certainly believe that, as I said, this is one of the major projects that could potentially be added to the major project list. We believe that this is one of the best projects for all of Canada. And that's why I think for both the province of Quebec and the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, that there is an opportunity here for a partnership and to move forward and actually get a deal done.
Patrick Butler, Radio Canada. Patrick? No. Marie Lee, Radio Canada.
No, he's not there. He's doing it with, that's it. Yeah, he's not there.
Did you want to ask him?
No, that's fine,
Okay.
thank you.
Henry, CBC.
I guess given the criticism that you faced when the appointment of Jerome Kennedy became public as one of the people to review the report, what made you consider him or put him on the negotiating team?
I think anybody who lives in Newfoundland and Labrador and certainly understands, I think Mr. Kennedy is recognized across the, not only Newfoundland and Labrador, but across the country as one of the more prominent lawyers and in the country, and he has proven himself time and time again. And I have full confidence in Mr. Kennedy and the expertise and the knowledge that he will bring and the detail that he will bring to this report. This committee, I'm sorry.
You said several times that the report would be tabled in the House of Assembly. When will that happen?
This afternoon.
Bethany, NTD.
I know you already touched on this, but just can you describe what your official ask would be to the Prime Minister? And you said you've been speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney.
Well, that's what the negotiations will start. We will sit down with the province of Quebec and start negotiating with the province of Quebec, and then we will see what the federal government are prepared to bring to the table as well.
What's your overall message, I guess, to folks at home? Some who might say, am I ever going to see the benefit of any of these deals in generations to come?
I think the people of Newfoundland and Labrador have lived with the 1969 agreement for a long time. And what they're interested in doing is developing our resources for Newfoundland and Labrador. You can go back to 1949 when we joined Canada, and I've talked about this before. We brought the richest fishing grounds in the world with us. We brought forestry, we brought mining, we brought hydroelectricity, and we brought oil. And yet here we are 76 years later with a huge deficit. So I think it's time for us not to be repeating the mistakes of the past. It is time for us to focus on getting the best possible deal we can for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And we will leave no stone unturned to make that happen.
I just want to follow up on Mark's question from earlier. You promised several times to hold a referendum, including during the election campaign. Does that promise still stand?
As I said, the first thing I'm going to do is get a deal. My focus right now is strictly on getting a deal.
Okay, but how about after the deal?
Well, first I got to get a deal.
Rogerville, Shoreline. Are you here? Forrest, Shoreline 4. Are you here? I'll go back to Heidi for her follow-up.
Thanks very much. Premier, do you think you could get a deal done before the next Quebec election?
I think if the parties are willing, if the province of Quebec and the federal government want to get involved, we're certainly open. We're laying down some of the things that we believe need to be changed in the current MOU and the things that we will be looking for, and certainly we're prepared to be at the table and do what it takes.
Would you have any concerns if you didn't get to that point by the time the election comes around?
That's something I can't control, but all I can say is we're prepared to be at the table.
Hello, I'm sorry, Premier, I was live just now, so I missed my question. You said earlier that you don't think that you have to tear up the agreement, but the committee is looking for some quite sweeping changes in what exists as of right now, and I wonder what do you want to keep out of this deal?
Well, again, if you go back to the recommendations of the committee, and those will be the guidelines that we will use. As I said earlier, it's about more value, more power, more transmission.
Do you I don't know if admit is the right word, but there is an election coming in Quebec. the sort of sweeping changes that are necessary, do you concede that it's very unlikely that a final deal will be reached by the Quebec election?
As I've said, that's not our decision. We're not focused on any timeline. I'm focused on, we will be there at the negotiating table. We will be prepared to negotiate. If the Premier of Quebec and the province of Quebec are there, and if the federal government want to be part of that, we'll be at the table.
Thank you, everyone. That's everything for today.
Can I just ask a quick one on the committee itself? Are they done now, or could you maybe call upon them for a future
No,
similar
the
agreement?
committee is done. They've done their job.
And are you concerned about the government oversight? It was a big part of the report, the government oversight and putting more back to the Hydro Board. And now you're having the independent panel.
We're putting an oversight committee in place as was recommended by the public inquiry on the Muskrat Falls. That's exactly why we're doing it.
That's everything for today.
Thank you.